Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Nullform No. 3 by Dem Mikhailov, translated by Colin Parker, narrated by Jeffrey Kafer. Chapter 1. Current Time, 2032. Gleet is by far the best trading intersection in Drainagetown. These weren't my words, they were the mournful snufflings of a hawker, and they were confirmed by a sign hanging above the transparent, plastic-covered entrance to the intersection. It was an unusual entrance, framed by two small waterfalls descending from the ceiling, and four pipes that descended from the sky and were fitted with transparent inspection areas 2 meters in length. The pipes were not empty, but gushing with continuous downward-flowing whitish streams interspersed thickly with black blobs. Occasionally there would be a brief flash of something large and formless. Against one of the pipes leaned an old man with a pitted and lumpy bald patch. With his forehead pressed to the pipe, he did not tear his gaze from the off-white torrent, but periodically stuck out his tongue to lick greedily at the see-through material. Nobody disturbed the old man, and nobody cared, for he was difficult to approach, being doused with the foul water of the left-hand waterfall. Let him lick, for he was scarcely likely to lick his way through the pipe now, was he? "Onward," I said, giving Bask a poke. The zombie poked the back of the lady goblin, who in turn poked Wreck the orc, and the group came to life and stumbled into Gleet, the best trading intersection in Drainagetown. Nobody paid us the slightest attention, for all around were dozens of folk just like us, guests of this gloomy, stinking city. "Shake your rain capes! Shake them and stamp your feet, you bastards!" The voice of the old biddy leaning on her mop was filled with deep-rooted aggression. "Stamp your feet on the grating! Hey, suckers, shake your capes! That goes for you too, you translucent trollop! Stamp your trotters!" "Screw you, crone!" The upturned middle finger almost touched the cleaner, swollen face. Pulling at the Velcro fastenings, the girl shook off her rain cape to reveal a crop top and miniskirt, and a silver chain that began in her hair and wound around her neck before passing between her breasts under the top and winding around her waist. "Blow up and die," Yorka muttered, grabbing me by the sleeve and pulling. "She really is translucent." Rex snorted and raised his glasses to his forehead, watching intently as the young beauty left. Bask listened in, perplexed and hoping for an explanation, and I sniggered quietly, understanding the goblin girl's surprise and the orc's fluster at the golden radiance emitting from beneath the miniskirt. It radiated directly from the evocative organ of the irate portress. How miraculous was the local fashion. "Come fly to the light, moths, come fly to the light." "May you be gang-raped by 40 unclean chimney-sweep orcs, you freaking sucker!" the charwoman said, spitting a juicy wad of phlegm at the departing floozy. "What a nice place," I noted with a smile, shaking my cape and stamping my hooves diligently. "Hey, mop lady, where are the trade points around here?" "Fuck off and die, Outskirts boy!" "Shut up already, Hatta," an approaching thug said, bitch-slapping the crone's cheek and nose. Clutching her nose and dropping her mop to the floor with a clang, she plopped down onto her butt and began whimpering. "The trade points are to your right," the thug said with an unconvincing smile. "Uh-huh," I nodded, and we moved on. A steady flow of dry air blew from above, drying the city's visitors and chasing the smell from the covered intersection. Multicolored light shone down from the ceiling, turning the clear, illuminated water into beautiful, twinkling rivulets and whirlpools that dispersed rapidly and changed their coloration. Tinted light spots scampered over the floor. I understood anew the expression sugar-coated shit. All you have to do is switch on a colored torch, and piss from the heavens will cease to grieve you, goblin. Wipe your snout and rejoice in the sonnet lumière. Oh, damn. I stopped for a split second in front of the first warning I saw, which was depicted in the same sexy style. A buxom brunette in an excessively unbuttoned and figure-hugging negligee was wiping her lips with a moist towelette. On the wrapper could be seen the first letters of a word, disinf, and beneath the warning picture ran the legend, "Don't lick your lips, use a towelette." What touching concern for the local residents. "I won't," I promised, as the nearly irresistible urge to lick my lips promptly arose. I managed to resist, which is more than could be said for the drunk shrimp of a man who stood in front of the painted warning. Licking his lips incessantly while reeling and moaning, he boldly allowed free rein to the frolicsome member hidden in his shorts. But his delight did not last long, as, cursing wearily, the aforementioned corridor youth gave him a sharp slap round the back of the head, and the puny imp's forehead met with the steel chest of the illustrated beauty. He gasped, groaned, and shuddered before peeling himself from the wall, wiping his hand on his grubby t-shirt and wandering off. The wincing Yorka hissed something. I didn't catch it, but the weakling did and turned around. Skewing his jaw and lips and bowing his head grotesquely, he wailed, "Who is that freaking wank?" Without a word, Rex smacked the man's forehead with the heel of his palm and sent him flying to the side. No second smack was required, because the man miraculously kept his footing, seized his crunching neck, and hobbled toward the exit. We went in the opposite direction, and a minute later found ourselves in the center of Gleet. Everything here was reminiscent of a miniature Klux. The same orderly collection of tables, a bulging bluish dome with star-shaped lights, and two observation domes, one large and immobile, the second small and mobile. 10 times more multicolored light spots roamed the floor here, and after seeing the astonished face of the keen-hearing Basque, I realized I was not dreaming, but could in fact hear the sound of music. Instrumental and positive, the vibrating guitar strings harmonized surprisingly well with the wavering aroma of fried meat in the air. No, not fried, but frying and browning meat, which my imagination could almost see sizzling in the fat of the pan. Sensing my whim, Rek made a turn to the left, and we followed him. There was no particular point hanging around the center, because there were no free tables or benches. Everywhere was absolutely packed, and many folk were sitting on upturned plastic or metal crates. And here were the towny fashionistas. 2 smiley, svelte lads passed us, wearing only shorts and sneakers with thick makeshift flashing soles. Swaggering haughtily, colored wire spirals hanging from pierced nipples, and hair decorated with tiny multicolored lights, each had a vertical stripe of small tattoos beginning at their right eye. One bore a figure of jug-eared goblin, then an orc and another goblin, before meticulous pictures of various sex acts following one after another. So many different poses. Such imagination. The line of tattoos stretched down to the waistband of his pink shorts and disappeared beneath it. If the depictions were anything to go by, the boy had a combat record. Or was it a catalog? The client would point a finger, making his preferences immediately clear and eliciting a price. Passing by the inkers who surely represented the new mythical races, Rek growled softly and shrugged. I made a mental note to myself not to be too tolerant of butt-wiggling lads in pink shorts. Or was I mistaken, and he was expressing his dislike of the pierced nipples and the wires hanging from them? We had seen the backlit succubuses, gawked at the inkers, and admired the murals. You could say we had had a genuine excursion around the sights of Drainagetown. A wide corridor led to a walk-through oval area crammed with trade points. One glance was enough to get one's bearings. 4 colored zones. Blue, weapons and combat equipment, also vending machines selling additional supplies. Green, food, water, tablets. Yellow, clothing and footwear. Stylish trade points with large windows, behind which the season's big hits slowly revolved. Red and pink rain caps, frocks, men's long shorts. Yorka immediately stopped still before heading slowly toward the yellow section. Red. 5 closed doors leading to med blocks. Med blocks! Yorka stopped in her tracks and poked Basque's shoulder. "Get ready, zombie." "Wait," I said, stopping them. "Look over there." I pointed at the exit from Gleet. The corridor narrowed toward the exit, and each of its walls and even the floor carried a large red sign that had clearly been made using a stencil. "Heavenly dew, no! It's the elves pissing in your face! Wake up!" Several goblins were assiduously scraping the walls with knives and scrubbing them with sponges. Above them hung a tiny observation dome, yellow lights flashing indignantly. The still fresh paint was disappearing fast, and the steel walls returning their clean, cold sheen. "Someone is unhappy about something," I noted profoundly before dishing out orders. Yorka, visit the clothing zone before you choke on your own spit. Bask and wreck to the med blocks. Don't start off by bluntly asking the system stupid questions. First order a full checkup. Yorka, I've changed my mind. Go to the med block too. Check up. You'll find me in the weapons zone. Let's move. Rex sprang to life. Bask procrastinated, and Yorka had to give him a shove in the back. The zombie was afraid of hearing the terrible news that he would remain blind forever. He was afraid the glowing flicker of hope would be extinguished. I made sure the group followed my orders, and only then did I head to a tall, narrow, and invitingly twinkling trade point with a brightly lit window. Inside there was only one thing for sale: standard needle guns. Unable to restrain myself, I caressed the cold glass with my fingers. At last. I have something way more interesting to spend 300 sol on. I was approached by a heavily made-up granny in skin-tight attire that emphasized impeccably every flaw of her sagging flesh. "My precious." "Get lost," I said, and touched a finger to the Tradomat sensor. "Don't spoil this moment for me." "Pervert." The elderly sucker spat and walked away. Balance, 1020. A soft click and a heavy clatter. With a sweet murmur, the glass slid aside, and the light inside became brighter. Closing my fingers around the hand grip, I took out the needle gun before the window closed, rotated, and displayed a new weapon for sale. I stepped aside to inspect it. After all, what if there was a sudden rush of buyers hankering for small arms? Well, yes, my first impressions turned out to be true. A shooting plank. A thin, flat body with a narrow opening at the front and no muzzle. A nondescript gray color. On the top was a yellow triangle that covered an opening for the cartridge. The grip was awkward to hold, and the trigger button was too small and hidden by a safety catch. A piece of transparent plastic that slid downward. A thin strip of plastic was mounted on the stock. Under it, a row of 5 LEDs. 2 green, 2 yellow, and 1 red, all currently lit. The weapon was fully charged. There were also 2 hooks for a strap, which was not included. "Hey, needle gun guy, congratulations on your purchase. You should celebrate." A smiley man passing by wore around his neck a large plastic sign depicting a bottle of moonshine and a lump of meat. "Pop into Copula's rainbow." A short nod gave him to understand that I'd heard. I leaned my shoulder against the next trade point, surveyed the assortment, and quickly chose what I needed: 3 cartridges and a wide black strap. Hearing a familiar hum, I looked up and saw a small dome over my head. It hung there momentarily before moving on, and it appeared to move on in disappointment, for the day had brought us an abundance of tasks, and the system was probably wary of providing anything too routine. There were, after all, certain norms that it conformed to. The cartridge fitted into its slot with a soft click. Then came a short and barely audible squeak before the trigger button and the LEDs on the stock became brighter. The needle gun was charged and ready for use. Okay, now to remove it. The cartridge was 3/4 sunk into the stock and difficult to get a grip on. I did manage to pinch it with my fingertips, but when I pulled, the cartridge was stuck fast, and there wasn't the slightest suggestion of a button, catch, or any other means of freeing it.
"If only I had something to eat."
The hint was croaked by a graying goblin with a single ear protruding from his burned head. Silently, I showed him a salt tablet, letting my fingers play with it.
"You fire off the whole clip. The 4th time you press the trigger, the cartridge comes out. Then you can remove it and change it."
"Thank you." The tablet changed hands, dropping into an outstretched palm covered with bumpy, scorched skin. Licking the ends of his fingers which had touched the tablet, the goblin stared thoughtfully at the weapon.
"You can't change the cartridge until you fire off the last round. Who could possibly think up bullshit like that?"
Balance, 930. My interface winked. Since Rek had joined the group, the opportunities provided by the group menu had increased significantly, and I now had constant access to the most recent medical data on each member of the group, both general and concerning each of their limbs, plus additional information if there was any. Right now, I was reading the updated information about my fighters in the med blocks. Group membership: 11. HFL-B, leader of the group. Status: normal. 91, HFL-B, member of group, status, normal. 13, HFL-B, member of group, status, normal. 714, GBL, member of group, status, normal. 91, HFL-B. Overall physical condition, normal. Recommendation, 7-day course of strengthening and recovery injection complex STUS-2F. Limb condition and status. URL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. ULL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. LRL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. LLL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. Additional information, nutrient deficiency. Damn good job we came here, I muttered, hunkering down and continuing to leaf through the information. Just as I had finished with Yorka, Rex data came through. It didn't look good. 714, GBL. Overall physical condition, normal. Limb condition and status. URL, normal. ULL, normal. LRL, normal. LLL, normal. The system was being disdainful. Rek was a mere zombie. Admittedly, he had grown some limbs, but he still hadn't even reached ORL status. I didn't have to wait long for the new data. 13. HFL-B. Overall physical condition, normal. Additional. Permanent handicap, blindness, 97%. Recommendation. 7-day course of strengthening and recovery injection complex STUS-2M. Limb condition and status. URL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. ULL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. LRL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. LLL, normal. Recommendation, injection REF-TO. Additional information, nutrient deficiency. Request for eye surgery, denied. Insufficient status. No sooner had I read these last lines than my lips spread wide in a grin of content. Rising, I made my way toward a familiar machine next to the med blocks. An info point. Infomat. Infoprov. I had just reached it when Basque stumbled stupefied from a med block door and stood there smiling. "And you were worried," I said peevishly. "Elb, there's—" "Your status isn't up to it, zomboid," I interrupted him. "I've already been told." "But I'm HFL. Combat." "Our growth knows no bounds. Stand here and hold on to this machine while I see what the system's giving us." "There's a chance. There is. Maybe I can get my eyes back," Basque muttered, leaning his back and head against the wall. Tears ran down his cheek. Or perhaps it was heavenly pee dripping from the peak of his baseball cap. "Stop it," I barked, placing a finger on the sensor. "Sooner or later we will achieve our ends and fix your eyes. What color do you want? Let's have blue. The mesmerizing bright blue of a clear sky. What do you say?" I don't really... So long as they see, I don't care about the color. And anyway, will the system give me the choice? It tends to make its own decisions, doesn't it?" "What if it asks, and you say you want blue eyes?" "Well, sure, if it offers." "That's settled then, zombie," I said, smiling widely and peering at the screen. "That's settled. Did you get the recommended injections?" "No, I wanted to check with you first. Do I have to?" "Yes, you do, Blue Eyes. Get back in that med block and do what needs doing." "Roger that, Commander." The zombie disappeared back through the door and was replaced by Rek, who hobbled slowly on his new legs. Grunting, the orc leaned against the wall which Basque had warmed for him. "I'm going to collapse." "Get over there and buy yourself some vitamins, isotonics, and food. Perch yourself on that bench and wait." "Uh-huh. Congratulations on your new acquisition, Commander." "Thank you." The Hulk shuffled off and Yorka appeared. Once more I was prevented from reading the machine's information. I turned the Lady Goblin around and sent her back to the med block with orders to get the necessary injections. Now then. The info point suggested I buy information from the bestiary. An excellent suggestion. It was better to know about pending terrors in advance. Let's buy it. What exactly are they offering? Gray Plunar Zarl, yellow Plunar Zarl, red Plunar Zarl, nesting Plunar Zarl, red Plunar Zarl, rank soldier, predator, fast, good swimmer, Navigates well in total darkness. Continues to grow throughout life. Place of habitation, everywhere. Attacks most often from out of the dark. Usually grips victim's head with all paws, bites deep with fangs, then shakes jaws, agitating wound with needle-sharp teeth and widening it. Spends from 20 to 50 seconds breaking through skull bone, then via perforation introduces lingual probe with bone pulverizer. Feeds on blood, flesh, and brain mass flowing into mouth. Sturdy scales provide reliable protection from bladed weapons. It is recommended to use heavy spiked weapons combined with impact, crushing, stabbing action on target. Natural armor can be successfully pierced with needlegun rounds. Given that the focus of red Plunar Zarl attacks is the head, it is strongly recommended to use protective headgear fitted with visor. Additional. Bites accompanied by injection of poison into victim's blood, causing lethargy, weakness, disorientation, loss of consciousness. Volume of injected poison depends on size of specimen. Instances of death from poisoning recorded. Antidote ZPXA2 effective against red Plunar Zarl poison, available for purchase from trade points. Vernacular names, Plux, Sucker, Vampire, Brain Eater, Brain Sucker, and others. Reproduction by egg-laying. After reading this, I pulled a wry face, and in order to keep a lid on my impending irritation, moved away from the info point. I had spent 5 sol. On what? It was, near as damn it, a full repeat of the previous description, with a little extra information that in truth was not essential, least of all if you'd come across red Pluxes in reality. And if you hadn't, the information from the so-called bestiary was absolutely useless anyway. Even the very dumbest goblin was capable of learning from a more experienced partner the simple science of a correct approach to Pluxes. Any goblin who had but once observed an attacking Plux being handled with a spiked club was capable of understanding the simple principle and following it, after a short and none too intense training session. The bestiary was a cheap and lousy means of relieving fools of their cash. Sometimes the system would provide this information for free, but it really was a nothing burger. What had I been expecting from the bestiary? For starters, full disclosure concerning the origins of the Plux, including answers to such important questions as where, when, and by whom the first Pluxes were discovered, how long they lived, and how exactly they navigated through space. A slew of important questions with nary an answer. I was particularly interested in the very basic, though vital question of the Plux's main food source. Nowadays, they caught scared, stiff goblins in a world of steel corridors, drank their blood, consumed their flesh, and sucked out their brains. It was an established fact. We were the prey, and they were the predator, and vice versa, considering that we would also chow down with great gusto on their flesh. We sapient souls, however, could not have been the original quarry for these scaly predators, and the Pluxes must simply have adapted their diet and switched to a new kind of prey. Why did the bestiary not include a large chunk of captivating backstory involving dates, references to habitat, and lists of hunters, researchers, and biologists? Biology. Where was the description of the beastie's anatomy? Show us a diagram depicting a location of the heart, the thinnest scales, the ears, and the weak spots on the paws. Show us at least something. What the hell was this dumb advice about, it is recommended to use heavy spiked weapons? A pathetic attempt to metaphorize the simple logic of Club, Cretan's Club, which was far more appropriate for the local populace. If you don't want to provide information, you unfathomable creeps, then don't. But why waste time with this futile nonsense? It's an excessive load on the memory. A door opened, and I walked in, laying down in a reclining chair full of holes, and replied indifferently to the system's indifferent question. Check up. The door closed, and I relaxed in expectation, and inevitability. Every day goblins would enter these rooms, and every day the system would close off the exit with a heavy steel partition. How often would certain goblins, criminals, for example, simply not see the light of day again? Murderers, rapists, robbers, etc. were punished by the system, which took their soul and limbs and reduced their status. It was a veritable system of punishments. But how did the all-powerful system punish those who attacked not goblins, but the system itself? Heavenly dew, no, it's the elves pissing in your face, wake up! Who had written that? It wasn't the spontaneous act of someone suddenly gone loco. The letters were identical in style, which pointed to the use of a stencil, which you weren't exactly going to find lying around in a corridor, just as you would be hard-pushed by paint of that bright color. You would have to search for materials, including a brush and a container for the paint, and cut out the sign. It seemed trivial, but it was also fundamental. 11. HFLB. Overall physical condition, normal. Recommendation, 7-day course of strengthening and recovery injection complex STUS-4M. Limb condition and status. URL normal. Recommendation, REF-T injection O. ULL normal. Recommendation, REF-T injection O. LRL normal. Recommendation, REF-T injection O. LLL normal. Recommendation, REF-T injection O. Additional information, nutrient deficiency. That's strange. After studying the information, I gave my consent to the injections and was informed that one STUS-4M injection cost 40 sol and the REF-T injection cost 10, bringing my expenses for the day to 80 sol. Confirming my consent, I was relieved of nearly 100 sol and administered 5 painful injections, 1 in each limb, and 1 especially long and unpleasant jab in the neck. Strange. I rarely had any complaints about my memory. I had recently read my fighter's diagnoses, and not counting Rek with his GBL, in every case the system had recommended almost identical injections. Almost. REF-T. Identical for everyone. A one-off. Accepted. Yorka. STUS-2F. Strengthening and Recovery Complex. Basque. STUS-2M. Strengthening and Recovery Complex. A difference of 1 letter, which naturally prompted the banal theory that girls got 1 injection and boys a slightly different one. But basically the preparation was the same. I got STUS-4M, also a strengthening and recovery complex, but the number indicated a higher level or a more recent variant with certain mildly different effects. What could I possibly have done to deserve that? Was the system taking care of a useful goblin leader who had proven his mettle not half badly in recent times? Given the current lack of alternatives, I would take this as my working hypothesis. Clenching my teeth against the intensifying pain in my neck and feeling my heartbeat racing and the blood pulsing in my temples, I returned my thoughts to the graffiti to pass the time until the end of the procedure. Heavenly dew? No, it's the elves pissing in your face. Wake up. Some mysterious character had cut out a stencil, prepared the paint and other items, and put it all in a backpack. Then they'd had to select a relatively populated spot where the message would be seen by a maximum number of indifferent passers-by. They had chosen Gleet and the most suitable corridor there. The next step was to observe the observers. The sheep had begun to keep watch over the shepherd, assuming a most unusual role. The local floor washers and security guards would require monitoring, for they were all dangerous. And the intelligence was gathered. While I'd been buying my needle gun and chatting to various folk, I had managed to keep an eye on the dome and glean that the corridor practically never saw twilight. The dome was absent for approximately 20 seconds at a time, and the timing would have to be spot on so that there were no guards with clubs or old women with mops. Other factors were irrelevant, since baseball caps, half masks, goggles, and rain capes were superb at concealing appearance and identity. 3 signs in 20 seconds. Even with a stencil, this was not the work of a lone wolf. There were at least 2 of them, 1 to hold the stencil in place and 1 to wield the brush or spray can. Although, was it even possible to find spray paint around here? Sponges I had seen. Wait, perhaps it was a special painting sponge. Yes, that was probably it. So what did all these musings tell me? Nothing. Yet at the same time, a lot. We would see what further observation of Drainagetown might yield. The door opened, clicking a hint, so I rose, holding my neck, and left the med block. I spotted my guys instantly. Rek was stretched out fully on a wall ledge. By his side sat Basque, rubbing his own neck. Yorka was hovering around the clothes vending machines. I announced a 10-minute rest and took a seat next to Rek, asking him, "Did you manage to wheedle anything useful out of the doctor?" "I did. An extra vitamin injection for 2 sol. That's something." "That is something indeed," I replied, nodding. "Tuck into your food. Basque, how's your neck?" "It stopped hurting. It's an interesting complex. What does it enhance? Did I get REF-T? Does it have anything to do with reflexes, since it was arm and leg injections? No idea. It's not worth speculating on, but everything will become clear after a couple of
Sample complete. Ready to continue?